All right. Welcome, everyone, once again to the Faces of Business with Damon Pistolka. And with me today, I've got our very own, Andrew Fox.
I like the new intro. That's great.
Yeah, I like the little music. I'm sitting here bebopping as we do that because I do this. It's a different one, but it's similar kind of music that's for the other. I can hear it in my headphones, but no one else can hear it when we're on Remo.
I like it. Shout out to Ira Bowman.
Yeah,
setting us up with that. That's almost makes us look like we know what we're doing.
Yeah, some of you think. Well, I'd like today that we got the official color of Exit Your Way on today. We both had to put the blue on, but that was by accident. But so this is, we're going to be talking today about knowing your business buyer. Something we brought up in different ways before and talked about before, but I think it's worth repeating because, as we continue to help people through the transaction and the process of preparing their business and through the transaction, it's more and more apparent that the better we understand who is going to be buying a business, the better we can have the business ready, the better they can possibly get more money. Mm-hmm. And what are some of the other things that you think really off the top of your head are advantages?
Well, I mean, it was we had our meeting, our roundtable this morning, and we're talking about listening to your customer. Discussion about that, and I think for the most parts, most business owners, if you've got a successful business, you're going to get approached about selling your business, and buyers can tend to be kind of a nuisance. I think it's more than that's kind of the mindset about it. Well, I'm not thinking about selling. I don't want to be bothered with that. And I want to think about it, and that's somewhat valid, anyways, too, because I mean, there are a lot of buyers out there who aren't actually ever even capable of getting a business bought, or are kind of kicking tires or wasting your time. And business owners are busy, but at the end of the day, the buyer becomes important to them when they do decide to sell, and it's just a matter of time. So I think it's worth taking the time to listen to your customer, like we were talking about today, finding out what it is that motivates them to buy, and really taking a really good close look at yourself and try and get from that perspective. And I think it's a good exercise to do because it'll make you a better business.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I mean, buyers are looking for value, so, and there's many iterations of what that is, and what value is to them. And so it's,
you said something and you started out that was really interesting because I had talked to a couple of business owners this week and across the United States, actually, about their businesses. And one of the first things that both of them said is, I get emails and calls almost every week of somebody wanting to buy my business. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a rite of passage for business owners almost. Once you get above, I don't even know what the number is, a couple million and a few million in revenue, you get on the radar of these places and you get on the email, they figure out the owner's emails and then they just blast them over and over with emails and calls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, buyers are, they have to be aggressive. It's not not easy to find a good business to buy. In fact, it's really difficult. And, they have to work very hard at it, and get themselves ready to buy, at least the good buyers anyways.
Yeah. So, well, the one thing, the one part of the conversation that I had with both of them this week was, you can get contacted by just about every buyer under the sun that knows your email address, but just because they contact you doesn't really mean that they're interested in your business. You just fit a profile that could be, and you got to go a long ways before that is even anything close to an offer or even really get into a meeting.
Yeah, most of the time they're fishing. They are fishing. Yeah. You know that too, because I got, I talked to a business owner whose business was doing terrible, and he says, they're calling me and he goes, I want to buy your business. And well, okay, you don't even know what my business is.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how could you say that, for the most part?
That's a great point, because they have no idea of the profitability of these businesses, or the position they're in, or what's happened in the business recently. They're just, again, it just fits some sort of metric they've decided, and that's why they're reaching out to them. But that's the one. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's something that you should expect as a business owner. As your business gets larger, you're just going to get contacted by more and more people that say they want to buy your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, it's just like thinking about that's a customer. The buyer, it will be your customer eventually. Yes. Well, when you're in business, you're always thinking about your customer. So whatever product or service you sell, hey, you want to know your demographic, you want to know your targets, you want to know why they buy, what motivates them to. You're on that all the time. Do the same thing when it comes around to thinking about selling your business. So that'll help you with all the time wasters.
Yeah.
Because really understand who are the buyers. What's the buyer I'm going to have? What's his avatar? What's he going to look like, or she?
That's a good point. I'm glad you transitioned into that, because one of the things that I thought would be helpful for people today is, first of all, why do we talk about this so often? I mean, we talk about buying and preparing companies. What is the main reason that we do that? I just want everyone to understand that.
Yeah. Well, education is good, and it's difficult to get information about buying a privately held business, because it's very, these are the privately held businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Publicly traded company, sure, you can find all the information you want when Sprint buys, or T-Mobile buys Sprint, and that's everybody's set up as all the investors are the owners of the company, are set up to be protected by regulations. You don't have any of that for small privately held businesses. And I like to share this information because I just I want to see people get out of their businesses successfully and get what they want out of it at the end of the day. And they can't do that if they don't really know what's going on or how it's done. And understanding buyers and what they're looking at too is, I just see it's kind of sad in a way, because there's a lot of misinformation as well that buyers latch onto too. So, and a lot of it is meeting the expectations of the person selling the company. And they want, just happened to us this week. We had a business owner, we talked to, and what did he say? He thought his company was worth
Yeah, there was someone that we had talked to that they had thought their business was worth $7 million, and the cash flow was about $400,000. And
I just exactly. I mean, that kind of things happen because they heard from somebody else that so and so sold their business for that kind of multiple, and so that's what they immediately thought they grabbed it. I mean, that's just wishful thinking. But I mean, how long? At the end of the day, too, it's like, think about that from the buyer's perspective. To pay $7 million when you're cash flowing $1 million, how long is it going to take you to pay that back? And account for interest and everything else that you've got, and it just doesn't make any sense. It's not.
Yeah.
And that's just the financial aspect of it.
Yeah, it is. It's just a financial aspect, and the other thing too is, we talk about this a lot because there's only about 80% of the businesses ever, or 20% of the businesses that ever get sold. Mm-hmm. And it's a sad fact when people get to the end of working that damn hard and they can't sell their business because, value expectations is one that we just covered. That's really good. But man, it's a shame when they get to that end and they can't turn it into the cash that can help them do whatever else they want to do after that.
It is a shame. Because if they understood value and a market, there's a market just like any other market. If they understood that better, they could sell their business. The ones that fail typically because they've wanted too much for too long, and the opportunity passes.
Yeah,
and end up having either to liquidate or shut down or just stop, or something happens. That's and we've seen that time and time again. It's just. It's not personal.
No.
Graded on what what amount of money you get for your business. It is what it is. And, and if you want to do better than that, then okay, come and call us at Exit Your Way, because that's what we do.
Well, and
you got to perform.
Well, yeah, we obviously help people do that, and it comes down to dollars and cents and being attracted to a buyer. It's no different than if I'm looking at a car on the lot, and if I buy an old car that looks like heck, but it's dependable and everything else, it might be a really dependable car. But if I see a brand new whatever that's in the lot and it looks really nice and shiny and fast and everything else, I can sell it for more money.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of the same things happen there. We got Rodney with us today.
It also it has to take a certain, I don't want to say this is all financial,
no,
because
it's not.
It's just a marker, and understanding your buyers too is really important, because you just have to, there has to be a certain step off. The financial portion has to be met, has to make sense. Right. And there is wiggle room in there to get a premium if you do certain things towards your business. And that's, that you can do. But at the end of the day, they're not going to pay you, for something that's just irrational.
Yeah. Well, and we'll talk about this in a moment, but that's really good, because when we talk about, there's different kinds of buyers. I've created a painting company, and I've got my truck, and I go out and paint. I might have a helper, and I make good money doing that. Right now, the buyer of that kind of business is much different than the buyer of a plumbing company that's got 30 people and 5 trucks, or a manufacturing company with 100 people in it and 25 million in revenue. So when we look at that, when you look at the individual buyer, like it would be on the first example, I'm a painter in the truck. What is that buyer looking for in general?
Yeah. I mean, we can classify buyers into certain categories and boxes, which helps, helps us identify, helps us zero into what's the best fit for my business, for your business. But I think what you're talking about too, with the the owner operator type level,
yes,
which is, there's a big market for that, and those businesses turn over, there's quite a lot of them. They sell all the time.
Yes,
they don't command the kind of price that a larger nope. with 30 to 50 employees would capture, but there are people out there. We still sometimes say they're buying a job, but. And they can come in and have a place to start it, and it makes sense. So that's the individual buyer, kind of understanding who that. It's one person buying one business. Maybe that's the only deal they'll ever do in their life, as far as that goes. Yeah, selling it themselves when their time comes. But there are quite a few people around that looking for that kind of work, especially when we go into bumps in the economy, people kind of getting displaced. Which is happening right now because of COVID. People with good management skills have worked for solid companies. Have learned quite a bit about fancying themselves and okay, I can operate a business and have a little money, because maybe a retirement fund, or that they can access, or exit. They got a little golden parachute when they left their companies, or they've just saved away. A lot of real good buyers like that that can take over those kind of companies. Again, if it makes financial sense, that's just one milestone to reach. But then you get into the other factor as lifestyle, right? And that's really a big factor on the individual kind of deal, buyer deals or owner operator businesses, because that's what those people are thinking too. It's I don't have to go to this job and then my bosses. This soul-sucking career that I've been in for 20 years. I've got enough money, and they have a dream, so you gotta sell that dream. And that dream is the dream that you had when you were in the business and why you started in the first place. And some of them I saw, I've had a business bought by a pretty high-level Bank of America executive banker, and whose hobby was woodwork. And Not a furniture company.
Yeah. Yeah.
Passion, you know, and so there's those kind of things, you know, so
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
you know, and if you understand your buyer too, the way you position your business, then you can really go out and kind of tell that story and get the passion going, and
Yeah.
you know, make you sell your business.
That's a good point, and that carries through. And you know, we were talking about the individual buyer, and I think we'll talk about the, you know, the different levels as you get a little bigger too. But it is really when you are selling a business, it's not about, you know, the equipment you got or even the financials are really not. It's about the opportunity for the new person to step in and what's in it for them. Why would they want to step in this seat or step into this position? Why would they want to be here? What is exciting about it for them? Because everything to them, and I think sometimes sellers get stuck on this about, this has been a great business. It's been cash flowing me, you know, good solid money for the past 20 years, which that's wonderful. But to a buyer coming in, they want to know what's in it for them. And that's not always the same.
It isn't always, that's for sure. You have to be brutally, you know, if you're selling your business too, you have to really brutally honest with yourself about where your business is at, you know, and what you're selling. You're gonna, you know, if you're talking about today and a buyer comes in, you're selling where you're at now, not where you're gonna be or could be. Not necessarily too where you've been or come from. It's you know, the most of the focus is on where it is now. That's what they'll pay for. You know, so you know, that's another factor as well, and that's a sad reality, is that people make the decision to sell their business typically because something bad has happened or it's not going well. And it should have. You know, I say I should have. should have 4 years ago, and you know, and then COVID happened, and you know, and this and that, and there's all kinds of things. You know, it's don't waste time with it. Just, you know, go back and fix the problem and plan on selling your business. You know, and like I said, I think if you're listening to your buyer, and you're getting free consulting from them.
Well, you are, and as you position your business like that, everything down to when you move into a little bit bigger business, like if you're going to sell to what they call a search fund, where basically it's a CEO that's got or high level executive that's got a fund behind him, funding him to find, or them, not him, he or she, to find a business, and then the investors will back them in buying that business. You know, that's a little bit different than the individual owner operator, because they can typically buy a little bit bigger business because there's more funding behind them, and it's going to be a little bit more structured in the way that they look at the business and the way that they look at going forward.
So that, you know, talking about what are types of buyers. You know, we talk about the individual one person buyer, and they tend to not that they couldn't, you know, pull together some capital or funds and buy a big business. That happens. Not that generally individual buyers are looking at owner operated businesses under $1 million or under $1.5 million in revenue a year, or $2 million. And then over that, then the next round, you know, category is the investor buyers, like you're referring to, a buyer, private equity groups. They're actually, you know, funds that are raised by investors specifically to go and buy businesses, and they have usually a strategy and an industry that they're targeting to. Search funds are kind of an offshoot of private equity, in that, but the difference being that you know, they're not looking just to buy a company as an investment. They're putting one operator or business or who they're backing financially to go and buy a business. And those are usually the search fund guys are usually have significant professional experience in the industry, and a lot of them are coming out of the MBA schools like Stanford and Yale, and you know, and basically their backers are putting their talent to work on the business. So And they look at it, they get a different perspective about what they're looking for necessarily than the other investor buyers. And then the other category outside of the investor buyers are the strategic buyers, which probably are the best buyers for anybody. And if you want to position yourself, I mean, as a company that if you want to get out and get the most money possible, you want to position yourself to be attractive to a strategic buyer. And because they'll pay the most typically out of a business. And a strategic buyer is, it can be your competitor. Right next door. It happens a lot. I mean, you know who they are. You've been in the industry for 10 or 15 years, and you're just getting to that age. Your competitors are going to call you up and say, "Hey, what do you guys think? You want to? We'll step up and buy yours." They can also, pay more. I don't fall in love with strategic buyers because some of them are the cheapest. They will just give you the low ball offer, but you sort of, But this is why it's important to really understand what they're looking for, because if you can build a company that has some sort of synergistic or strategic, value to the buyer, then they're not so much looking at a multiple and how to pay back that thing, based on the revenue you've been receiving. A strategic buyer, a really good example is we had a process serving company that was for sale that pretty much had locked up a market, in one state. And I won't say where that was, but the company that bought them, was developing into that space. And it was a 5-year plan for that company, a bigger company, to actually take, get in, build into that territory. And so it made a whole lot of sense for them to just buy this company. And overnight, they already had an expanded territory, which saved them. Yeah. So they're not necessarily looking at a multiple of your cash flow on the purchase price. They're just saying, well, that number works. It's cheaper than us having to take 5 years to actually build out this territory. Yeah, and people and buildings and everything they had to do.
Yes, and it's funny you said that, because I actually had a conversation with a business owner this week about acquisitions, about the fact that they were having in the Midwest, they were having trouble hiring skilled people in manufacturing, and they were actually out looking for acquisitions just to get talent, as a way to grow. And because it literally said that if I don't go to the high schools or the junior colleges and recruit people directly at those places, I can't hire anybody. And that has been my last hires. And this is somebody who's got 10 positions open. Yeah. And they said, I'm also looking for acquisitions because if I can pick up 5 employees in an acquisition.
Yeah. Yeah. A good example, we just worked with an electrical company. It was relatively small, 6 to 10, licensed electricians, bought by a much bigger company, just because they just tucked them in to become their in-house electrical department, which they did.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You're exactly right. That's that's strategic buyers. Strategic, getting the key word there, which can circumvent value on the additional value side of things. Because hey, if you have a need, you just in a big company like that, you had massive construction projects on hold because they couldn't get electricians in to do the work. It just. They didn't care what
it's easier just to buy it and get done, so they can get moving with what they want to get done, because it's cost them too much money.
They're losing so much money on the other side of the fence. They just, so what do you want for it? And we were like, yep, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So one of the things,
to get back around on that though, is know your buyer, right? Yeah. You can build a business that if and private equity groups do this too. If their mission is to take companies, buy the small ones, build them all together, and their ultimate end goal strategy is to sell out to a strategic. And those are the big companies like Lockheed Martin or somebody might come in and buy the private equity group of companies after they've. But because there's an intermediate. There's a step up between individual kind of mom and pop run business to a professionally managed organization. And And that's really the key, again, as far as the financial part of it, is have that sort of strategic itch that will get someone to buy your company. And if you think about it ahead, you can position yourself to do that. I think for a lot of people, it happens by accident. I built my company and somebody came in and buy it, but it doesn't have to be. If you're smart about it and you just, again, talk to the buyers, listen.
Yeah. Well, and it's like we've mentioned this many times is a search fund buyer that is a private investment fund with a CEO that they're intending to place in the business. Your business that you're going to sell, if you're in that size range and that's where you're going to sell your business to a search fund kind of buyer, your management team has to look different, or should look different, than if my business is much bigger and I've got 10 million in EBITDA and I've got multiple facilities and blah blah blah. You better have a management team in there, outside of the owners, that can develop and execute a 5-year strategy and plan to grow. Mm-hmm. You have to have that, because someone that's going to come and buy something for $30 to $50 million, that is a requirement to get through the door. They are not going to bring the expertise to grow that business long term. They are not going to have they can have some contacts and stuff, but those teams are very different as you move up the length of the ladder. Mm-hmm. As you go. When you talk about an individual buyer, they may have industry experience or local knowledge in an industry that they can bring to that company, and they're fine there. And as you get up into the next one, you better have a management team that can take care of most of the business operations with an executive that can come in. Mm-hmm. And then you get into the big ones, and it better have the full meal deal.
Yeah.
And be able to lay it out.
Absolutely. I mean, again, we back to the strategics. We're looking to buy because they needed skilled electricians or whatever. Same thing with the management team. That is an asset of the business. You are selling. You may be your employees. You may not think about it that way, but that it's hugely important to the higher level buyers to come in, and they want to know. Again, your value is affected. Like we ask buyers right off the beginning, oh, this is cool. I see what you're doing, and your services. What's your processes like? Everything you're telling me about what you do and how great your business is and everything, is it written down? Does it, do you have management, leadership? Who are the key employees that are making this thing run? How many years of, experience do they have? Nope. If it's not written down, you don't have solid, recognizable business practices and processes where the business can run by itself, you're losing money. You're probably losing a deal. The buyers are just, one of the biggest frustrations they have is with the people. But if you have a culture and a team in place that runs that business, is accountable for it, is motivated, he can really.
Yeah, you make a great point, because across the board, if you have a business that you can set goals and achieve those goals, or get pretty darn close most of the time, you're way ahead of the game in most things. Because if I've got $1 million business and I grow at 25%, and I can lay that out that I'm going to do that, and I do it like I say I'm going to do it, that business is much more valuable than someone that grows 25%. But they got no idea how they did it, or what it caused to do it, because it's not repeatable necessarily for the person that comes in as easily as a business that says, we lay out our goals. This is how we measure how we're doing, and this is how we make sure we're beating them or trying to get there.
Yeah, and how the people, again, how I hired them, how I trained them, how all those processes too. Those are the kind of things that they're looking for, that are extremely important to buyers. Again, buyers, which is thought that's what we should have done today. Instead of bringing me in, is we should bring some buyers on and chat with them.
There's some coming on in April. We've got a couple professional buyers coming in, which I think is going to be very interesting to hear their perspective, because I want to ask them. I want to ask, and I want to, one's a search fund buyer. We're going to get an individual buyer. We're going to have a bunch of them.
Yeah, it's really good is to listen to them talk about the deals that went, what they've learned, You know,
yeah, it's gonna be great because
what this company, what didn't work, what did work.
Yeah.
That's really the goal, and then you'll find out where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And again, what they're looking for. So
yeah, because I think it's really important, and when we bring them in, we can talk about that more. And one of the things that I wanted to discuss briefly is put yourself in the buyer's shoes when you look at the business, because first of all, I heard this. I was reading a book, I don't know, a couple months ago about The Road Less Stupid by Keith. I think it's Keith Cunningham that wrote it, but he talks about a bit about. There's a whole section in that book about several chapters about building a business that you can actually sell someday. And the whole book's not about it. It's about running a good business. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was really interesting because one of the things he said, if you're working so hard in your business that you don't have a life, you're burnt out and it's just killing you, why the hell would somebody else want it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just as simple as can be, is like, if you don't have your business running well enough that it's not burning you out, mm-hmm. and it's not at least giving you a reasonable return for your effort, mm-hmm. then you really are not in a position to even start thinking about it. But I thought that, from a buyer's perspective, that is probably one of the most simple ways to measure how's it going.
Brutally honest. You got to be brutally honest with yourself. And it's difficult to do, especially for a business owner, because they're self-made for the most part. And, they're only accountable to themselves. They don't have to, and it's tough to look in the mirror and say, what are they seeing? But it's critical. It can help you, if you're really good at that. People who are good and, it can really assess themselves honestly like that, do what's difficult. They do the difficult stuff first.
Yes, they definitely do.
And it's common sense, but that's absolutely right. It's you're right. If you're burned out, you got to figure out why, because you're right. The buyer's the first thing they're going to ask. And when we sell a business and present it, right on the front page, we have, the basic highlights of this opportunity for a buyer to read. And one of the things that we ask, put right in there is the reason for selling.
Yeah.
And so ask yourself, why are you selling? And that's really important to the buyer because it tells them a lot.
Yes.
And burnout's one of them.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not a good reason to sell.
No, because they would be putting themselves in the position to be just being burned out potentially in the future. And I think that's a huge deterrent to someone wanting to go into a business, even though they can make really good money. Mm-hmm. It could be a really lucrative event or opportunity, but they would still turn it down.
Yeah.
So the other thing I was thinking about in putting yourself in the buyer's shoes is, let's talk a little bit about the financing of the purchase of the business. Mm-hmm. So now I'm a seller. I've been in this business a long time. I've had years to pay down debt. I've got my equipment's probably paid off now. The new buyer comes in. Explain how the new buyer is probably going to finance the purchase of that business.
Sure. And most likely with other people's money.
Yeah.
They're going to come in with a little cash and they're going to try and leverage so that, they can buy a bigger business. And that makes sense. If you have $100,000 in cash, you can buy a business for $100,000, or you can buy $1 million business and use the $100,000 as your down payment with the bank. And at the end of the day, you're going to have a lot more value out of that larger business and a lot less risk.
Yes.
The buyers are, sellers don't think about that. It's because they've already paid down the equity. They have equity in the business. It's taken years for them to get there. And they have to understand that the buyers are starting from zero.
Yes.
Zero. And you just got to you have to assume that they're going to be borrowing money. So that you have to factor that cost of capital into the purchase price.
Yes.
And be brutally honest with yourself. The cash flow has to support. We call it the price sanity test. If you're looking at it from an individual who's buying a business, there's got to be enough cash flow to cover the debt service. And there has to be enough cash flow for the owner operator to pay himself at least market value for the 50, 60 hours a week he's going to put into this business. And then there's be a little left over for that to reinvest in the business as you're going along. And that, within a reasonable amount of time, which is most people have a 5-year window.
Yep.
I want this business paid for. I want to own it and have all my debts just like, within 5 years. And if there's not cash flow to support that kind of basic level off your asking price, then your price is not right.
Yeah. It's probably too high. And it's a good sanity check, like you said. It's really the same no matter the size of business. I mean, there's usually a bank component or a loan component from somebody outside. Mm-hmm. There's an equity or cash in by the buyer or investment group. And then the seller usually has to carry a note of some sort or some percentage of the sale going forward as well.
Yeah. And again, that's it's part of educating yourself when you're getting ready to go sell the business. Go talk to professionals about it, bankers who actually lend for M&A activity, and have them look at your business. It's probably even your own banker. They understand your cash flow and that kind of stuff. They can be a great source for that. But they're going to be able to say, we're only going to be able to lend up to us this and that for where you're at today. That'll tell you kind of where your value is.
Yeah.
And also tell you the kind of things you need to work on too. So, the cost of capital is really important. And the professional buyers really know this. I mean, that's what they're good at. But you could still be a really fast growing, 20% year over year growth on a business. But that's all great news, but can be difficult to get a transaction done because growth is expensive. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot. You've got to not only have the purchase price, you have to have a significant amount of capital, working capital to fund that growth, right?
Yeah. Especially if you're in an industry that takes expensive equipment and you're nearing your capacity on that equipment. I mean, there's so many things. High payroll, if it's high labor.
Yep.
Yeah, there's so many different things that can affect that, and that's a great point. That where are you at in what you can do with the capacity you have or the space you have currently is really important as well. Yeah, that buyer again is looking to grow.
Keep going. Think about that too. So there's a lot of bankers are good at doing that, as well, because they're not they want to see deals get done. I mean, they're in the business of lending money.
Yes.
But they're cautious, and so and they're not a buyer, so they're not lying to you. You can go to them and say, but and that's where we run into trouble with buyers or sellers who, they want all cash, or they want to keep the receivables in the company. Working capital adjustments are a big headache, and sellers just do not understand that. But a bank won't. You talk to the bank about that. First of all, know what your working capital requirements are for your business. How much cash do you need to keep this thing running? Learn about it. Talk to your banker about it, because there's ways to access that kind of capital. But the buyers, no bank will fund a deal if they don't see sufficient cash there because right after the deal is done, the buyers are starting at zero.
Yes.
And they got to have cash in there to pay the employees, keep the business running, pay the rent, pay the taxes, because those bills they start day one. You close. And the sales go out, and maybe you get paid in 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. Some cases, sometimes not at all. And it takes a while for that cash to catch back up. So you've got a lot of bills you got to pay before you get to.
Yeah.
And,
that working capital can be significant. It really can be. It can be millions and millions of dollars in some of these transactions easily. And people don't consider that as the second check, because just like the loans we talked about before that the buyer has coming into a business, the seller has also had plenty of time to build up that working capital over a lot of years. If I'm putting $100,000 a year in working capital every year, in 10 years, it's $1 million. Well, the buyer comes in and he's got to fund $1 million, and they've got to fund $1 million coming into that business. It's it's a significant number.
Yeah. And if the banks don't see enough cash there to support that, you know, they know how to do it. You know, that's one of the main things they look for. You've got to be well capitalized. So
that is for sure.
And it's not all on the buyer to do that, because they don't do that. The seller has to contribute to that working capital. But it's a negotiation just like anything else. But it affects the sales prices significantly. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. It can swing it a lot. It can swing it 7 figures one way or the other and do that. So one of the things that I think was interesting, we've been on a while talking about this, and it's going to be fun when we get some of these actual buyers on in April. But one of the things that's come up in the recent past, in the past couple of years anyway, is the importance for online reputation management. Because as we look into these buyers now, whether it's all the way through the board, top to bottom, you know, everything's on the internet. Everything's on the internet anymore. If you got you know, small manufacturing company and you got 3 pissed off employees for whatever reason, could be legitimate, could be not, and they get on Glassdoor and they're bashing the company, that could severely change your chances of selling that company.
Yeah, it certainly can. That's reality, and it doesn't matter what business you're in, what industry. It's across the board. And a lot of the clients and sellers that we work with are near retirement age, and are not really kind of, you know, they started business in a different era. So, you know, they don't, you know, a lot of them will ignore some of this stuff, or, you know, not kind of stuff, but, no, can't be ignored. It's not only, you know, it's an attack on your business, and it's, you know, think about it that way too. Think about your value, right? So it goes down. That's crisis management, but you're probably looking at not even being able to sell your company. It's just another one of those reasons that companies don't sell. Yeah. And there are people who can help with that stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely, because I was thinking about that and how that's changed so much. And even the point of, you may have never even really needed a website to do a business, but if your website is 15, 20 years old and you're trying to sell your business, it's just another part of the outside. Like if they drove up to a you know, a half torn down junky building is what it equates to.
Yeah, here's a small thing too, and I think it makes an impact, right? You got a pretty good sized business going for sale, and the email for the owner is, you know, Joe Seller, you know, Joe business owner at AOL.com. Yeah. You know, it's, you know, it's not his company name. It's not his own URL. Own it. At the end of the day, does it really matter? He's making good money. It's a good business. But you know what, you know, the sell, it's a psychological thing too.
Yes, it is.
They haven't kept up with the technology, you know, and that's a very, very small little detail, but what else haven't they kept up on? You know, and that's, so the buyers, you know, immediately are kind of reluctant, and it's things they have to fix, you know, after they go in and do it. And also that's telling you something about your culture. It is.
It makes it, any of this stuff that we talk about that's digital, that even the extent that you're saying there, the email addresses, if you don't, you know, if you've got a multi-million-dollar company and you don't have your own domain, your own website, and everybody's got their own email addresses, and people are using a Gmail, there's something wrong. I mean, people and buyers look at that, because the buyers now, if you look at it, the vast majority of buyers have been around since, you know, the internet was prevalent. They grew up on Google. They know that web, you should have an email address that's from the company. That's just the way it should be.
And, you know, also accessible.
Yes.
You know, you're in business, you need to be accessible. Again, it's not that it's hurting you because they, you know, I can fix that, right? I can buy this business, and, you know, we can get the URL fixed. We can make it so people actually return calls and you don't get voicemails all the time. You know, all that can be fixed, but it tells you something about the culture of the company. You know, and you've got to be brutally honest with yourself about that. And, you know, buyers are looking for companies that embrace, technology and use those tools,
Yeah.
So it's quite important to them. And when they see stuff like that, then they feel this is a company that's fallen behind.
Yeah, it definitely could be. And when you look at it and you go, you made a good point there. I've had people in the past few years now really start looking at companies, even to the point of, you said accessible, the executives being accessible. How does the social media accounts for the owners look? Are they on LinkedIn? Do they have a picture on LinkedIn? Does their website have an employee page?
Yeah.
Because we're moving into a time when employees want to be part of a bigger mission or an overall cause. And the companies that understand that, small and large, right? It can be a small company. You can have a 3-person restoration company that the owner is active in the community, active in, we're out helping the food bank every month. We have, those kind of things are huge for buyers now, because they see the kind of goodwill that spreads throughout employees, the community, and for the business in general.
Yeah, I mean, we can go, perfectly good examples. Again, this is about the business seller. The first thing the buyer's going to do is going to go do their research. Start online and then start jamming through. And guess, and the first thing they find is they can't find the business owner anywhere. He's not on LinkedIn, or he's on LinkedIn and he's got 2 followers.
Yeah,
he put a profile up there 10 years ago.
Yeah,
can't find him on Facebook, can't find anything on him. And, it's okay. It doesn't mean you're not a successful business, but it's a successful business for you. You can hide like that and be, because you've been there for 25 years, your customers know who you are. And you're making enough, you're making money. That's called the lifestyle aspect of it. The seller is happy with what I'm making, but a buyer isn't going to be satisfied with what you're making. They're gonna want to grow the company. All of them come in with ideas on how to do that. If you can't be found, then that's a cultural problem.
Yeah.
It's a flag. It's a flag. It makes me nervous. Very hard also to change that kind of culture in an organization. So but
you're right too.
I get it, through a deal and then have to deal with all that stuff.
Yeah. If they've got that history, it gives people it gives buyers coming in another opportunity to get to know them, the company, the culture, like you said, about that business before they move in, because it's a huge detractor for somebody if you can't find any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, good stuff. Well, Andrew, if someone was going to be thinking about selling their business, what is the most important thing? If you boil it down to one thing, what do you think that they should be concerned with first?
Sales.
There you go. That's a good one. I didn't know what you're going to come up with, but that's a good one. I think you're right. I think you're right, because you got strong sales and it's growing, and they're good profitable sales.
What's your process? Is it written down? Who are your people? How good are they? Are they A people, B people, C people?
Yeah.
This is what the buyers are going to be looking at too.
Yeah.
Do we look at our performance? Do we do earnings reports and check in, monthly, quarterly? What did you do last year? What did you think you were going to do? And what did you do in this next quarter? Are all those things in place? Number one, that's the first thing that the buyers are, want to talk about.
Yeah. That was like 20 seconds, massive knowledge dump right there. I think if someone's listening to this, they should back that up and they should write all those down, because I think you hit it about in the right order, and because it's so much about that. Are your sales strong? Because you can see that easy. If they're strong, they're moving up and they're good, profitable sales. That attracts somebody. And then you move down the list, the other things that you said there. I think those are great advice. It's really cool to when you walk into these companies that have their have things together, and people are doing their best work because they got the right tools and the right opportunities to do that. The right people in the right seats, man. It's the buyers feel that. They feel that buzz. They feel it in their chest when they come in there and they go, man, this place is humming. And then you talk about, but that's just the start.
Yeah.
They've got 4 things beyond this that are, then that buyer gets excited.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a key employee, right? Somebody who's been working for you for a long time, they're going to want to talk to them. The buyers are going to want to hear, and you can go talk to them, and it's good to understand what, you may have an idea. This is what I think my business is. What does your key employee think this business is? And let them be honest. It's okay. Yeah. I mean, you definitely want to hear that. It might be a lot different than what you'd expect. But if you run into that and you've got a key employee who's, you can just tell, they're passionate about it. Things are working. They've got the tools they need. They are rewarded. That if they're satisfied, that's a huge bump for a buyer.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Well, it's been awesome talking about this, and I'm excited because we're kind of kicking it off with you and I talking about this stuff, and then in the coming weeks we're going to have several business buyers talking about, from their perspective, what do they look for when they're buying businesses. And I think, overall, we're just going to be trying to give people that are selling a business more information so they can be working on this earlier, because when it comes time to sell a business and you haven't done these things, you're probably too late.
Yeah. It's hard to catch up at the end.
Yeah, it sure is.
It'll make you a better business anyways, really. Yeah. If you're ready and being ready to sell, there's it's looking at every one of those value drivers and talk to the buyers. That's what they're looking at. What are the value points they're looking for?
Yeah.
And besides the financial, that's the obvious, but there's quite a bit more to it. Be great. Tune in with us and talk to some real business buyers.
Yeah.
People doing it. I think if you're a business owner, you'll learn a lot.
Yep. Awesome. Well, Andrew, thanks for stopping by today. We will be back again. Today's Thursday. Yes, it is. It's Thursday. So next week we will be back and have some more interesting people talking about life and business.
Sounds
Thanks
good.
a lot.
You bet.
See you all later.